What we're going to be doing today is we are going to take a look at a big shift that's going to take place as the war is dragging on. Now, there's something you kind of have to remember. The Union thought this would be an easy war, that it would only last a handful of months. But as it's dragging on, we can see that, yes, this is going to last much longer than we anticipated. Because the South simply has pretty much one thing going for them. What's the one thing that the South really has going for them? The one big advantage that they have? Suggest what is it?
Most of the officers and soldiers are from the South.
Sure. The best generals that we produce are Southerners. Now, I believe I told you guys before, the Union seems to have the students, whereas the South has the professors. Now, this is going to frustrate Lincoln so much because he's going to give command of the Union Army to a commander that he thinks is actually going to work out. Problem is, that commander continues to fail him. So when Lincoln has an ineffective general, he fires him, promotes someone else. They become the head of the Union Army. Then they get outfoxed, they get outmaneuvered. Lincoln gets frustrated with them, so he fires him, promotes someone else. He makes his mistakes, fires him. In just the first few years of this war, Lincoln's going to go through 4 commanders. All of them will eventually be fired. He starts with General McClellan. McClellan has his issues. He gets fired. So then Lincoln promotes General Burnside. Guess which one of these guys is General Burnside?
John.
The one with the gigantic sideburns. It's named after him. They used to be called Burnsides, and then it just kind of flips. Burnside makes his mistakes. He gets fired. So then we promote General Hooker. He makes his mistakes. He gets fired. Then we finally promote General Meade. Now, I'll tell you something about General Meade. He is pretty average. He's okay. But he definitely has his flaws. In fact, when General Hooker gets fired and Meade's promoted, Lincoln sends a messenger to him to deliver his commission, to deliver this letter. He goes into Meade's tent on the battlefield, and Meade says, "I didn't do anything. I plead not guilty." And here's this messenger going, "Sir, I'm not here to arrest you. I'm here to promote you. You're now the head of the Union Army." This is who we have. A guy who thought he was being arrested. Instead, he's being promoted. Who does the South have? Who's the commander of the South? General Lee. Maybe the finest military mind the United States has ever produced, and now he's fighting against us. This is a big problem. Lincoln's frustration is continuing to grow. He wants someone who he thinks can lead the troops effectively. So far, he's 0 for 3. When Meade takes over, Lincoln believes maybe this guy has what it takes. Now, like I say, Meade is pretty average. He's okay. He's very safe. He does things kind of by the book. Meade the way he commands is he sort of plays not to lose. He doesn't play to win. Lee is the exact opposite. Lee is bold. He's audacious. He makes wise decisions. He seems to just be able to figure out the battlefield better than anyone else. He just has it ingrained within him. He is simply vastly superior to any kind of leadership the North has. But the North does have several advantages. We've talked about it before. A much bigger population. They can put a much bigger army on the field. They can sustain losses better. They have all the industry they'll ever need. They just keep getting outfoxed. Maybe Meade will be the one to end that. Lee thinks, now is our time. Now is our time to end the war. Now, you guys saw at Antietam, McClellan was fine just throwing wave after wave of men into the battle. Horrific losses. Over 20,000 casualties in a day. We can't keep doing that. We need something different. And even Lee is going to say, if that's what McClellan is hell-bent on doing, we have to be patient. We have to wait for our next opportunity to invade the North. We need to end the war with a decisive Southern victory on Northern soil. What Lee is going to prepare for is where his next invasion will be. What Lee is going to prepare for is not an invasion of a border state. He wants to invade the Union proper. He sets his sights on Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania is a free state. He wants this to be the invasion of the North. If he can win in Pennsylvania, it's very possible the American people will just get sick of this. They will just sue for peace and just be done with it. Lee sets his sights on a small town in Pennsylvania called Gettysburg. Now, there's a few different reasons as to why. One, Gettysburg is a very convenient railroad hub. There are lots of rail lines going in and out of Gettysburg. You control Gettysburg, you control basically the surrounding area of its supplies. But there's also something else about Gettysburg. In Gettysburg is a shoe factory. Probably about a third of Lee's army doesn't have any shoes. He needs to get them the supplies they need. But there's something else that's really convenient about Gettysburg as well. Gettysburg is a very, very short trip to Washington, D.C. You control Gettysburg, you control the capital. Would this be bad news for the Union? Oh yeah. Gettysburg is going to become the turning point of this war, where the Confederacy believes, probably correctly, if they can just win here, if they can just have another convincing victory at Gettysburg, maybe the war comes to an end. Which means the North has to do everything they can to win at Gettysburg. We are going to see that at the beginning phase of this war, the South keeps winning and winning and winning. At Gettysburg, the tide is going to turn. But all that's going to hinge on some very, very small things. First off, when Lee is moving his army north, like the very capable commander he is, he knows it would be foolish to not send a scouting party first. He sends a very small scouting party, about 20 men, a little bit more than that. And he tells them, your job is very specific. I need you to find a good piece of ground for us to hold this battle. I want it to be flat. I want it to be open so we can maneuver. I need you just to tell me what the surrounding area looks like. Sends them out. The Union, same thing. Sends out a small little scouting party, about 20 men. And what Meade tells them is, if you run into the enemy, your job is to run away. Do not engage them. I'm not going to accidentally start this battle before I'm ready. By sheer happenstance, these two small groups of 20 men accidentally run into each other. Guess what happens? You'd hope. They shoot at each other. A couple men are going to fall, and then they both run away. This is kind of the problem, though. When the Confederates get back to Lee, they say, we found the enemy. They're just up there. 2 men are dead. And he tells them, you idiots started the battle before I'm ready. Oh well, it's happening now. Now, both sides are somewhat caught off guard. Who do you think that favors? The Union or Confederacy? Why do you think it favors the Confederacy?
Well, they have, even though the Union has more supplies, they need to transport those supplies.
Sure, that's part of it. What else does the Confederacy have going for them? Thought I heard, what was it? They have General Lee. General Lee says, if this is when it's going to happen, then it happens now. It's not ideal for him, but he can maneuver in such a way where this is going to be an advantage for him. Gettysburg is a mere 80 miles outside of Washington, D.C. If he can just win at Gettysburg, it's very possible the war comes to an end. Now, the battle doesn't start the way he wants it to, but Lee's just simply a genius when it comes to this. He can maneuver simply so much better than Meade can. He can move men, he can move supplies, he can simply just push and pull the way he wants to. After day one of this battle, we've got a big problem. Guess who's in the lead? Confederacy. After day one, we're in a situation where yet again, the Confederacy is just embarrassing the Union. Meade is in a very difficult spot. He has to win. And on day one, he's already behind. Now, it's at this point I will say this. Meade actually makes a very wise choice. He does what he should do. Like I was telling you guys before, Meade is very conservative. He's by the book. He plays not to lose. He doesn't play to win. But what he does at the end of day one is actually very sharp. He can see that he is losing, and his decision is, I will simply fall back. I will refuse to engage. There is a much better position that he can take that is considerably more defendable. At the end of day one, Meade tells his army, we're going to retreat ever so slightly. We're going to fall back. We are going to take that high ground. They go up this, I want to say it's small compared to the mountains that we have, but it's a hill. And he tells his men, we are going to retreat up the hill to Cemetery Ridge. Now, I need to ask a couple of questions. First off, why is it so nice? What are the advantages of holding the higher ground? What advantage does Meade get by going up this hill? What's one thing you can kind of imagine? What do you think? Mac, what do you think?
You can see more.
Sure. Absolutely. Sure, you have the vantage point. You're up top, you can see the enemy, you can see what they're doing. You're absolutely right. What's one other thing do you think that's helpful by having the higher ground? So Jeff, what do you think?
Your enemies, when they're coming to you, they're traveling up.
Sure.
And one that's firing and two that slows them down.
Sure, they gotta go uphill. You go downhill, use gravity, sure. All these are very good things to have, and Meade takes the opportunity. He goes up the hill. Now is when things take the weirdest turn. Lee says his famous quote, the enemy is up there, we will fight him up there. Now let me kind of ask this question. Is Lee kind of in at least somewhat of a rough spot when they go uphill? Yeah, he's at a disadvantageous spot. This is where he has to make a choice. How do we go about this? He could simply just pack up and leave. Say, they have outsmarted us, we'll wait for another opportunity. But Lee understands something. They can't sustain a very long, dragged-out war. They don't have the numbers. They don't have the supplies. If he's going to win this war, he needs to do it right now. This is Lee's opportunity. He's not going to let this pass. When Meade goes up the hill, Lee's decision is, we will go up there and fight him. He's going to approach one of his subordinate generals, General Ewell. And he tells General Ewell one sentence that changes the world. Lee goes up to Ewell and he tells him,